has also served as the associate editor of the East Bengal Almanac. Currently, he is working on Indian football. Can we have a round of applause for our next speakers?
I have been in literary festivals for decades now, but never have I been more excited about chairing a panel or moderating a discussion, and that is thanks to this book, East Bengal 100, East Bengal's Century, and myself. And thank you, Gautam da, for this opportunity and for writing this book and shining a light on the glorious history of a club that represents the struggle of many people in this state or a large swathe of the South Asian subcontinent, and the successes the club has engineered. Gautam da is really fortunate that you have managed to combine your professional expertise, which is that of a chartered accountant, with statistics in sports. And I believe what Gautam da has done broadly for football statistics is very unique in India, because a sport like cricket has lots of statistical data behind it, but as I was speaking to Gautam da in preparation for this, he is one of the people, or maybe the only person here, who has given that statistical anchoring to this great sport of football, which whenever I talk to colleagues and friends abroad, people are constantly surprised by the fact how deep-rooted footballing culture and footballing fandom is here in India, and particularly this part of India. So thank you, Gautam da, for gifting us this book. If I may begin by putting this question to you about the beginnings of East Bengal. And I think it was rooted in struggle of a particular identity, and can we hear it from the author's mouth, as it were?
Thank you, Mr. Chakrabarti.
Debanjan, please.
Thank you, Debanjan. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start the East Bengal story immediately. Well, it was in the beginning of the 20th century. Football had become very popular amongst the youth of this country, particularly it started from there and gradually, but you see, at that point of time, Calcutta was the capital of India, and almost all the major tournaments like the Calcutta Football League, IFA Shield were being held here. But there was talent elsewhere in Bengal, particularly in the region of Dhaka, Faridpur, Kumilla, Mymensingh and others, who were all talented players but didn't get the opportunity as no tournaments were held there. So they had all come down to Calcutta, either as students or to work somewhere else, but primarily to play football in various clubs here. They came, they played. In fact, if I can mention here that Mohun Bagan's 1911 triumphant team had 7 people coming from that region. But fortunately or unfortunately, the rest of the people here were only footballers, but they were treated very, they got a very shabby treatment from the club owners, of club this thing. They were frequently dropped, frequently given different situations. It was one such situation which led to the birth of the club, that is East Bengal Club. Now, in those days, the Calcutta Football League and the IFA Shield were there, but Calcutta Football League and IFA Shield, not in the league, first division, not more than 2 Indian teams could play. And of course, the IFA Shield, everybody could participate initially. But in the Indian teams had to whet their appetite in playing tournaments like Kuch Bihar Cup, Trades Cup, etc. It was one such match of the Kuch Bihar Cup, the semi-finals, between a club called Jora Bagan, which is in North Calcutta, versus Mohun Bagan. Now, Jora Bagan club had a vice president, a gentleman called a gentleman called Mr. Suresh Chandra Chaudhary, who was a zamindar hailing from Maimansingh part of East Bengal. He had recruited two players, Ramesh Chandra Sen Nosha Sen, and Shailesh Bose into the team, and on his assurance, they had signed over to the Jorabagan club. But unfortunately, throughout the season, they were either dropped or allowed very little or scanty matches. This upset them badly, and on that particular match, the semi-finals of the Kuch Bihar Cup against Mohun Bagan, they were again dropped. They couldn't take it any longer, nor did Mr. Chaudhary, who it was on 28th of July, and 3 days later, which was a Sunday, the two players who were dropped had come over to Mr. Chaudhary's residence, which was at Neemtala Ghat Street in Jorabagan, and they said, we cannot go on like this. There's people coming from that region being heckled every time, whether it's for dialect or whether they don't like our face, but we are all good players. How do we survive? So one of them asked, why don't we form our own team and give it a name? Name what? Instantly it came out East Bengal. That was how the club was born. Mr. Chaudhary was also a very resourceful person. Got hold of his friend, particularly Mr. Torit Bhushan Roy, an advocate by profession who belonged to the famous Bhagyakul Roy family, which boasted of a test cricketer called Pankaj Roy later on the Indian team, and also Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das, who also came from Dhaka, and Maharaja of Santosh, and all these got together to form this East Bengal club, which started from the very next year. In fact, even they mentioned that the very first match East Bengal played was at the Sham Park with the jersey of the club. This was the first jersey of the club, this here, this one, where also featured
That is a history not very many people know. Goshtapal is always associated.
He played one match in that Hercules Cup, which he eventually East
Exactly.
Bengal won. The team went on, and the first hurdle it faced was in the year 1925, when it got promoted from second division to first division. But because of this draconian law, the stringent law that not more than two Indian teams, and already Mohun Bagan and Aryans were already featuring.
I'll just pause you there and just alert the audience to the fact that here is this club which has the self-described, describes itself as the National Club of India, was indulging in some anti-national activities back then.
Well,
yeah?
I will not really mention
let's talk about it.
Anti-national, but these two clubs were there already in the first division of the Calcutta League, and East Bengal had no way to get in. Maharaja of Santosh was the then president of East Bengal Club. He pulled it, and the only opposition he got was from the two Indian clubs. Now, I would say whether these two clubs opposed because of East Bengal coming as a third team, or whether they felt that their recruiting of bringing players from East Bengal may not be successful, as most of them would like to play for East Bengal because of the very name. Maharaja of Santosh was very clever. He got hold of the Britishers, the 7 other clubs which formed part of the governing body. One advantage went in favor of Bengal. East Bengal, even while playing in the second division, used to draw much more crowd than many teams of the first division. So he got hold of the IFS governing body and enabled the East Bengal club to feature as the third team. He broke this law and made the third team to play. If that law was broken, I would be sad to say not survived this long.
And you mentioned a very interesting thing about the fan base of the club right from the beginning. I was just going through the book and reading Senik Seth's story about his family's involvement with the beginnings of the glory years of the club, as it were. What struck me was that there is this misconception that East Bengal is the club of only the East Bengal people, Bangals as we are usually called. No. But there is more to it. I mean, right from the beginning, I think there was more to it.
Yeah, right from the very beginning, the support-based featured from all parts of Indians, whether it was from South India or North India. But of course, the Bangals dominated. They were more in number. And they had that feeling that since we are being pursued for various reasons, we have a club of our own. Now, in 1925, when the East Bengal first played the first division, they met Mohun Bagan for the first time. And they won the match, of course 1-0, though Mohun Bagan dominated the match, I must tell you. But then the real rivalry started, and the fans' rivalry started, and it is the fans which has really helped East Bengal to survive this 100 years. I'll give you one interesting story of the rivalry of the fans. The two clubs, East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, was in the very East Bengal ground right now. Is not Mohun Bagan was later shifted to CFC. That very ground in East Bengal, it was in the year 1951, and that particular time, East Bengal had a very bright secretary called Mr. J.C. Guha, who had selected a very strong side, particularly of the 5 forwards known as Venkatesh. Mohun Bagan had scored a goal against the run of play or whatever it is. My team is leading by 1-0. Eventually, Mohun Bagan went on to win 3-0 that match. And East Bengal fans who were getting habituated to success suddenly found a block. And they lost this particular match, and they felt very annoyed and upset. Their entire anger fell on the commentator. He said he was very biased. Why did he say that my team is leading by 1-0 at the halftime? So they wrote a letter to the All India radio authorities saying that please remove this commentator. He's biased. He cannot be allowed to commentary any East Bengal Mohun Bagan matches. The authorities of the AIR checked the tape and found really he had said such words, so he had to be removed. The next time the two teams met, East Bengal Mohun Bagan, was the IFA Shield final. And All India Radio had given the commentary to one Mr. Pearson Surita. He was the commentator who replaced. Now, Mohun Bagan fans who were very adjacent to the club realized that they cannot take this lying down. East Bengal have got our commentator removed. What do they do? Well, they also wrote a letter to All India Radio before the match. You cannot appoint Pearson Surita as the commentator because he's too lucky for East Bengal. Every time he played, East Bengal won. This, the All India Radio authorities, the sports program, was said it's not a technical point. And Mr. Surita writes in his memoirs that, yes, I did commentate. East Bengal won that match by 2-0. There was a hat-trick of IFA Shield wins, which made them the #1 club in India and took them as the first Indian team to tour Europe. This was the rivalry of the fans, how they fought against each other. This rivalry even stretched in other parts also. I will mention another story before we go on to the next subject. It's amongst the celebrities. It was the year 1961. The roles were reversed. That time, Mohun Bagan was dominating. But the celebrities, the film stars, and of course the players would meet every Sunday. You know, a place called Boshusri Cinema Hall in Boshusri near Hadra Road. Every Sunday in their coffee house for their Adda session. And the famous matinee idol then, Uttam Kumar, who was an ardent Mohun Bagan fan, was enjoying Mohun Bagan's success. And in the Adda session, he would really go after the East Bengal supporters, all the Bangals who were there, saying that, well, today we did this, today we thrashed the Bengal, things like that. The Boshusri's manager, Mr. Montu Bose, was the football secretary, and one of the ardent, another film celebrity, Bhanu Banerjee, was also an East Bengal supporter. They said, we cannot take this lying down, we have to do something. What is the something? That, fortunately, in 1961, there was a film called Shoptapodi. Shoptapodi done by Ajoy Kaur, which had a football match in its very first part of the film, that is. It was between two teams. One was the Indian doctors and one was the European doctors. That time, Mohun Bagan was touring East Africa, so they were not available. So the director of that particular movie, Mr. Ajoy Kaur, approached Montu Bose. He said, if you can help, he said, certainly. On that very particular day, they came at the East Bengal ground, and Montu Bose had arranged the Rangers team, Rangers players, who were all Anglo-Indians, to come and represent the European side. And East Bengal had two sets of jerseys then. One was the red and yellow, normal red and yellow, and one was the white jersey. If the red and yellow clashed with the opponent team, he took out the white jersey and gave it to the European team. They wore jersey and were ready for the shoot. When the Indian team of doctors were about to shoot, then which had Uttam Kumar, he brought out the East Bengal jersey, the red and yellow jersey. Now this Uttam Kumar violently opposed. He said, I will not wear this jersey and shoot. On this very ground, I have cheered against this. I simply refused. We better get another jersey or stop the shooting for this day. In the meantime, the heroine of the film, Suchitra Sen, she was playing the role of, I think, of a cheerleader in that particular movie, had come all dressed up, ready for the shoot. Then she found nothing was going on. And a lot of people had surrounded Uttam Kumar. So she walked up to the director and said, what is the problem? Why is the shooting being carried on? Ajoy Kaur told Suchitra Sen, Madam, there's been a problem. This jersey, this particular East Bengal jersey, the hero has refused to wear it. So we are looking for another jersey. If we get another jersey, we'll shoot today. If we do not get another jersey, we may have to postpone the shooting. Suchitra Sen in front of Uttam Kumar said, nothing doing. Tell the hero to wear this jersey and complete the shooting today, right now. If he doesn't agree, get another hero. I will finish the shooting right now. Uttam Kumar got scared, wore the jersey. Fortunately, it was in black and white anyway. And
Unfortunately, it was black and white.
Black and white, and the shooting was complete. The movie became a super hit. But the fallout of this particular story between the two fans were that Uttam Kumar for the next 6 months in the Boshutri gatherings never uttered a word about East Bengal supporters or Bangals for that matter.
This is just amazing. But, and this book is a storehouse of such stories. So I really recommend, if you're a fan of football, you don't have to be a fan of East Bengal to buy this book. But if you're a fan of football, please buy this book. Again, coming back to slightly more gritty part of our history in the subcontinent, as it were, the formation of East Bengal Club led to I think the bouncing back of those displaced by partition and through series of migration. Would you like, and you talk about that a bit.
Yeah, from 40s, Everton's Jinnah came back from England after his law, passing law from there, and asked for the separate Pakistan. The riots broke out in different parts of the country. And one of the victims of these riots were the Hindus from East Bengal, East Pakistan. Hordes of refugees started coming in, of course, a little later when the partition actually took place. And they were absolutely stranded. All of them were established in East Bengal, but unfortunately here they were stranded either in some refugee camp or in the railway station. And for earning, they had nothing to fall back upon, except for selling fish in some of the local markets or doing other, even a particular person who was doing business in saris had to give up everything and come here. At this point of time, East Bengal with their brilliant football, but I mentioned that Pancho Pandav, this was the era, and later on it came Balaram and Shamachpati, they all claim. East Bengal won 16 trophies and played inspired football and gave a new life, a new identity to these refugees and absorbed them into the mainstream. This was a major contribution, East Bengal's social contribution, in helping the refugees to come back into the mainstream. And this was, nothing will ever be proved, but this was one of the golden period of the East Bengal. Now, how much it helped came in 1957. Another incident when there was a lot of riots, a lot of small type of riots and problem involving football matches. It was between Mohammedan Sporting and some other club, I think Harainen Club. But the particular, it had gone down to such a level that the then Chief Minister, Dr. B.C. Roy, called a meeting of 4 clubs, Mohun Bagan, East Bengal, Mohammedan Sporting, and Rajasthan. And he wanted the clubs having the name of region, like East Bengal and Rajasthan, to be changed, and he wanted Mohammedan Sporting and a club which formed on religion to be changed. The then East Bengal secretary, J.C. Guha, objected and said, this is not simply possible because my team, club comes from the members, and they have decided on the name of the, club. So nothing can be happened. He resisted. Mind you, if East Bengal had changed their name in 1957, the club would have vanished, like many other football clubs, and we wouldn't have seen the 100 years life till today.
Something happened in 1942. Apart from the more famous Bialisher Biplab, what was the other football revolution going on in 1942?
This
Tell
was
us
the one
about
just I mentioned. I'll tell you, as you know, in that particular point of time. Sports was playing a very important role in sports. Congress was united at one point of time, but later in cricket, they didn't have Ranji Trophy at that much as important. In Pentangular, there were, the clubs were formed with regional names like Parsis Gymkhana, Hindu Gymkhana, and Muslim Gymkhana. Muslim Gymkhana won 8 Pentangular tournaments on a row. Mohammedan Sporting Club won the Calcutta Football League 5 years in a row in 30s. So when Mr. Jinnah came, he wanted a partition. He wanted Pakistanis, we are superior to India, we want a division in the country. Now this was the time, this was the revolution when with Nehru and Gandhi opposed bitterly, so much so that this particular Pentangular in cricket was stopped from 1945. But the rivalry between India, Pakistani, and then the birth of East Bengal all have linked to there. And East Bengal with their very much performance of the Pancho Pandam, Balaram, and others, really established themselves in bringing about a new revolution in football. They were the first team to tour Europe. They won the Robust Cup and Durand Cup a number of times in those days. And they helped particularly these hapless refugees to get back into the mainstream. There are shops like Dhakeshwari Vastralaya. There are shops like Sadhana Ulshadhalaya, who came empty-handed. And then they started their business after following East Bengal and everything. You know, in the first match between East Bengal and Mohun Bagan in 1947 in the IFHL final, so much crowd had come for East Bengal. They wanted to enter the ground that the police was unable to control them and had to open shooting, public firing, and the match had to be postponed for 1 month. So that was the craze about East Bengal. As I mentioned, East Bengal always had a large following, and probably one of the largest right now. And this was the main issue. Now, their performance has been a folklore so far. The performance of East Bengal has been a folklore in the post-40s, not of recent times anyway, but say in 1970 for that matter. East Bengal defeated a club called Paths Club, but there is a story behind it. There's an important story behind it. East Bengal in those days had a player called Porimal De, who was outstanding, but for some reason he was dropped from the team on that particular day. And Porimal De had already reached, the match was being played at Eden Gardens. So he had reached the ground in normal clothes. Just before the team left the club tent for the Eden Gardens, Captain Shanto Mitra, after consultation with the coach, Mohammad Hussain, struck out one of the reserve players' name, Shankar Banerjee, and put Porimal's name there, and asked Shankar Mali, who was the kit manager, to carry Porimal's kit there. In the match itself, there was no goals, and it was a up and down affair, and East Bengal was playing a foreign tough team called Pas Club Tehran. 3 minutes before the final whistle, or the final hooter, Mohammad Hussain wanted Porimalde to come in. So Shankar Mali ran towards the enclosure where Porimalde was sitting. And he said, Jongla, his name was Jongla, it was called Jongla, Apni Ashun, you have to play. He fell from the sky. He said, no, I'm not supposed to play, I've come in plain clothes, I've come to watch the match only. No, I brought your jersey and everything. So he came down quickly, put on the jersey and the boots, entered the ground, and his very first touch, he scored the winning goal. And it all became history. And that particular win of East Bengal was celebrated by the fans, so much so, by newspapers being rolled up and lit up with fires, which became something like Moshal, which was the East Bengal's symbol.
That started the
tradition of celebration for every East Bengal team. So this is one aspect.
And the flame, which is the club's emblem, also comes into.
I'll tell you another recent story what happened, but of course that was the ASEAN Cup final. Now we had a player called Mike Okoro. Mike Okoro was a very good player, he's a Nigerian. In the semi-finals, he got injured in his shoulder. In the final, he was reluctant to play because he said his collarbone had broken. So they took him for the East Bengal officials at Jakarta. This match was in Jakarta. They took him for a X-ray. They took him for an X-ray, and he was shown the X-ray of another person. And he said, this is your X-ray. Nothing has happened to your collarbone. Please play. He played. East Bengal won 3-1. Now, there are stories like this, which has really made everything possible. I've written this book bringing out all these stories. And before I end, I'll end with one Bollywood thing, which everybody will like.
No, I'll come to that. So
okay.
we have a bit more time. How much time do we have? We have 10 minutes, yeah? 15 minutes. So we have time. We don't have to rush. We can share some more of these stories. So tell us a little bit about the two golden periods that you talk about. I mean, why are those periods golden? And a bit more about all the myths and rumors and fantastic stories we keep hearing about 1975 5-0 scoreline.
Yeah, I'll tell you, of course, of the recent memory, those who are living, 1940 was a golden period. Of course, I've mentioned it a number of times. 1970 was another year in which East Bengal started with a victory against Past Club Tehran, but it carried on with a brilliant victory against the North Korean club, Dokro Gang, as North Korea had reached the World Cup at a certain point of time, and in Delhi in the DCM final. But of course, the icing on the cake came in 1975 in the IFA Shield final, when, due to some fortunate, East Bengal had a brilliant team that time and a most inspiring coach. A man called Subhash Bhumik was on the team, who was very recently passed away.
Yes, yeah.
He engineered, and East Bengal beat Mohun Bagan by 5-0. There are a lot of stories why Mohun Bagan let in 5 goals, because they had gone to Diamond Harbour for some training and this and that. They shouldn't have done it. They let in 5 goals. In fact, it could have been 6. East Bengal wasted a penalty in that match. But the Mohun Bagan fans till today have taken it very, it's to their heart. They are very sad about it. Mohun Bagan did score 5 goals against East Bengal in 2009, but East Bengal put in 3, so it's 5-3 is not exactly a 5-0. 5-0 so much so that even one Mohun Bagan fan committed suicide. And he wrote in his suicide letter, when I'm reborn, if there's anything in rebirth, let me be a Mohun Bagan supporter and beat East Bengal by 5 goals.
And that day hasn't come yet.
That day hasn't come as yet, but it could have come this year itself.
Not yet. যখন হবে তখন বলবো.
This is what has made that. You see, all stories like this and the anecdotes like this, events like this. There used to be a fan. I'll tell you, you talked about fan who used to come every day to the ground, every day whenever there was a match. On a particular time, the matches would start at say 5 o'clock. He would be there every time by 4:45. One day he came at 5:10. He was 20 minutes late or 25 minutes late. So the other members said, Dada, ki holo ajke? Deri keno? Why it's late? Oh, bollo, deri. Amar boro cheleta aaj mara gelo. আমি ওকে পুড়িয়ে এলাম from the শ্মশান, তাই আমার একটু দেরি হয়ে গেল. But that is the fan. That was the people would queue up for both East Bengal and Mohun Bagan 2 days in advance. There are a lot of Mohun Bagan fans also similarly like this, and that is why the two teams are relevant to each other. So without one, the other doesn't survive. I've written this book, of course, with the heritage of East Bengal history, but I would say, and I'm here indeed thankful to the organizers of Kolkata Lit Meet, particularly Jeet Banerjee and Malavika Banerjee, that they have brought football for the first time as part of Kolkata's grapevine, as one would say. Without.
There's Jeet, and I can see Dhiman, who's got a great mention in the preface of this book.
I will tell you, without East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, they form the with Kolkata's heritage story will never be complete. I've written this book. I want to write one on Mohun Bagan, but I think I may not be able to do it this year itself, because there's India's 75 some functions that something I have to do for them also. But this is how East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, and without each other, they will not survive.
I completely agree with you, because though we have this great rivalry, but it's also the foundation of great friendships. I'm married into a Mohun Bagan family myself, and after a few drinks, there is no end to how much ribbing I get from my father-in-law and brother-in-law. But the other thing about this relationship is I was very fortunate to be there at the start of the 100th anniversary celebration of East Bengal Club, and Debashish Dotto from Mohun Bagan Club came to speak. He was invited to speak, and of course, I mean, it was in Netaji Indoor Stadium, packed to the rafters with East Bengal fans, and there was the usual jeering and booing, etc. And then he let it all die down. And he said this wonderful sort of words that, we are the yin and yang of Indian football. Without one, the other basically doesn't exist. And I'm really glad that you also mentioned that the history of Indian football, the history of India, is in some ways related to this rivalry and to these clubs.
These two clubs. It is perhaps Asia's biggest rivalry. These two clubs. Without them, we have cricket, we have ISL, of course. Corporatization is a must, according to me, is a must nowadays with East Bengal and Mohun Bagan.
So this is my question to you. Let me put it to you very formally, which is, as an East Bengal fan myself, in 2022, there is not much hope. So what I keep hearing from my fellow fans from all over the world is corporatization is at the heart of this decline. Do you agree?
I don't agree. You look at this Hyderabad club, which won the ISL. 2 years ago, they came last. It is their simple corporatization and simple, you will have to do it, and they have now won the ISL 2 years. East Bengal and Mohun Bagan both have to realize now money is the most important part. All clubs all over the world, Manchester United, they want to give if you have to get the best players, you have to give them the money. You see, gone are the days when East Bengal used to be run by the members' subscriptions and other things. Gone are the days at all, completely. But I'm sad to say, I think corporatization is a must. In fact, you would say that East Bengal and Mohun Bagan were corporatized way back in '98 when Vijay Mallya came in. Because the shares were allowed, Vijay Mallya didn't interfere. That's a different story, which saw the decline of the club. When the corporate started interfering, then I think Mohun Bagan, it's gone better. I think Mohun Bagan, fortunately, whether they merged or whether they got into with the 80K, they got merged with somebody who had a football culture. They had a team, they had everything, and so there was no problem for Mohun Bagan. East Bengal's two investors, of course, the first one was Quest and the second one was Free Cement. They didn't have any football culture. So they would have to depend on building a football culture. So you have to give them time. But I think without money, it's absolutely impossible and there will be no decline. I saw the India-Bahrain match day before yesterday. I thought the Indians were playing quite well against the Middle East. I've traveled a number of times to the Middle East with the East Bengal team, but they were playing quite well, though they lost. I think the Indians definitely played well.
No, I think, I also personally believe that the future of Indian football does lie in bringing in a lot more of a professional culture through the corporates, and there might be one ex-owner of Chelsea who is in need for adopting a club, and maybe, I don't know, it's not appropriate for me to invoke his name, but I'm insinuating that maybe East Bengal may be adopted by that ex-Chelsea owner. But something slightly darker, the 16th August 1980 tragedy. What do you think went on behind that, beyond just a football fan rivalry, or was there something else?
You said the rivalry, the incident took place on 16th of August, but the rivalry started 4 months back. It was bitter rivalry because all East Bengal players overnight switched over to Mohammedan Sporting, and that was engineered by some ex-East Bengal officials. One was Debanjan Chakrabarti, another Poltu Das. They engineered with the Mohammedan Sporting. That annoyed the fans. Fortunately, East Bengal also got the advantage from some Mohammedan Sporting official who was against this particular, their administration, and got hold of Majid Bhaskar and Jamshed Nasiri, which saved the club. But we had the Federation Cup in Calcutta those days, in the early, in May, I think. There was fighting there. In 16th of August, what happened was the major fault of the authorities, the police. They allowed, normally in any East Bengal Mohun Bagan match, the galleries are separate. In everywhere, in any EPL matches, you see the team galleries are separate. There, they allowed the Ranji stand to have the same gallery for both the supporters. And after that foul which took place when Bidesh was retaliated after being brought down by Dilip Palit, and both were given marching orders, the fighting took place. There was absolute stampede which led to this crisis. I hope that is never repeated. And they stopped playing football without the Ranji stand. Yeah. They had the Nehru Cup after that, but they didn't use the Ranji stand again. And now, of course, the football has shifted to Salt Lake Stadium. So I really hope for football to survive, you must have these two teams and must have these two teams supporters always cheering. But without ending, I would...
No, we'll come to the ending. We have some time, I'm being assured from there. The other fantastic thing about the book is you have not just spoken about East Bengal, the football club, but you have spoken about the tradition of hockey and cricket and athletics in the club. And as a kid, I distinctly remember following East Bengal's fortunes, not just in football, but in cricket and in hockey particularly. And that, I think, the fact that, those things hardly exist or matter anymore is a great loss for Indian sports and Calcutta's sporting culture. Tell us a little bit about the history of those sports.
Didn't stop playing cricket. They're still playing cricket. In fact, Kapil Dev played both football and cricket for East Bengal. Both the pictures are here. He helped East Bengal to win the Peace and Trophy in 1964, but it was in 1994, sorry. And he played in 1992, played for East Bengal and Mohun Bagan in football with the East Bengal jersey. The picture is there. Sachin Tendulkar, Sourav Ganguly, all played for East Bengal. But the cricket, East Bengal was never really, but East Bengal in those days had a cricket secretary called Gupi Pandit, who had a big fish business. And a lot of clubs used to wanted to play East Bengal for the lunches. He would give 6 or 7 types of fish to bring and serve the lunches, and that was one of the attractions. Hockey East Bengal even started from 1925, and they had players like Gurbakh Singh, Joginder Singh, a lot of Olympians.
Absolutely.
And their pictures are here. And athletics, very few people know that Emil Zetopek, who won the Olympic gold medal in long distance marathon in 1952 at Helsinki, and his wife, Dana Zetopek, visited East Bengal club. The picture is there in 1953. So these minor sports maybe, but the rivalry, even if today, if East Bengal and Mohun Bagan played that Peace and Trophy final, the stadium was packed. Half of them supporting Mohun Bagan, half of them East Bengal. And every time East Bengal had a boundary, half the crowd would go up. It was all mixed, but there was no fighting. Then eventually East Bengal won the match because of Kapil Dev. And Sachin Tendulkar, of course, they played. And, then,
and I was very lucky to have watched Kapil play football for East Bengal. I don't remember him playing cricket, but the football match I definitely was there. So you shared an amazing story from Tollygunge film industry. So if Tollywood is there, can Bollywood be far behind? I believe you have some very juicy Bollywood stories up your sleeve too.
Yeah, this one I will mention. It's there. It involves Lata Mangeshkar, the Nightingale, the Indian, who passed away recently, about a month back or something. Now, Lata Mangeshkar, basically she was a cricket fan. She was a cricket fan, and she had come to perform in East Bengal Club in 1988, and was made. She was given after her function. She was given the honorary life membership by a gentleman called Shuprakash Gorgori, who was to bring all these players. Now, what did this particular Lata Mangeshkar ko, Shuprakash Gorgori, while giving the award, asked her, "Madam, आप East Bengal नाम का पहले कभी आप सुना था?" वो बोले जरूर जानता है ईस्ट बंगाल का नाम. जब बॉम्बे में ईस्ट बंगाल खेलता था, बर्मन दादा रिकॉर्डिंग बंद कर देता था. बर्मन दादा मीन्स सचिन देव बर्मन. बर्मन दादा रिकॉर्डिंग बंद कर देता था. तो ठीक है, एक बार क्या हुआ, वो जो दूसरा वाला था मन्ना दे साहब, वो ओपोनेंट टीम का सपोर्टर था मोहन बगान का. दोनों में इतना झगड़ा होता था. एक बार रिकॉर्डिंग चल रहा था, उस दिन ईस्ट बंगाल मोहन बगान का मैच था. तो रिकॉर्डिंग बंद करके दोनों ही एक गाड़ी में मैच देखने गया. तो हम वेट कर रहे थे. रिकॉर्डिंग होने के बाद मैच खत्म हुआ, लेकिन दोनों तो आया नहीं. तब दोनों अलग अलग वापस आया. इतना झगड़ा किया कि दोनों अलग अलग वापस आया, और उस दिन रिकॉर्डिंग नहीं हुआ. लता मंगेशकर tells this. हम जानते, he used to get this card. In fact, he used to tell one of the persons there, "I've become old, I can't see East Bengal matches, why didn't you take this card?" I said, "No, how can I take Lata Mangeshkar's card and enter the ground? They'll catch me."
I think, thank you so much for these. I think there are lots of fans around of both clubs. So any questions from the audience?
Yes, Dhiman.
Yes, Dhiman. After you. Yeah.
In spite of having so much football culture in Calcutta, why we are not able to playing football in Olympic? A very question, but I'd like to listen your viewpoint.
Yes. Well, that should call for another session. East Bengal did play the Olympics it's not East Bengal. India did play the Olympics, and they even qualified for the Olympics. That was in 1960. That was the golden period of Indian football, and they even reached the semi-finals of the Olympics in 1956 when they beat Australia by 4 goals to 2. In fact, they beat Australia again 7 goals. Now look at Australia and look at where India is. It was in 1960 when India beat Indonesia. They had players like Chuni Goswami, Balaram, P.K. Banerjee, and all these famous players and things. The decline started actually from where the government, everybody was involved in this, I would say. In 1970, they say 70s, but East Bengal let in 9 goals from Burma in the Merdeka, 7 goals from China, and 6 goals from Kuwait in the Asian Games. But you see, East Bengal, India is to lose the international matches by 9 goals and 8 goals. But in the club level, East Bengal defeated the North Korean team. Exactly. Mohun Bagan defeated the Pele's, drew with Pele's team and defeated at the club level. The problem was the Indian team when it is to go for camps. Siddhartha Shankar Roy and the IF and the club authorities did not allow the main players to go because they thought as domestic football for East Bengal winning the trophy or Mohun Bagan winning the trophy was more important than playing India. How would do? And of course, this decline started in the Middle East, brought players from brought coaches from outside and developed. Indian football, I think, is now on the way up again, slowly but surely. It was the highest rank when the ranking started in 1994 was 94. They are around 104. So if somebody calculated and told me how the calculation was done, if in 60s it would have been within 50. But those are hypothetical. I think we'll get another Sunil Chhetri soon. I saw the East Bengal match, and definitely players like Baichung, Ayam Vijayan, one of them, Ayam Vijayan, would again be reborn. One particular thing, when in South India, when Indians played football brilliantly, they were Brazilian type of football. They were playing passing, dribbling, and thing. In 60s, they always had 3 or 4 players from South India, whether it was Balaram, whether it was Habib, Naeem, whether it was Ayam Vijayan. But now in South India, many trophies, many tournaments have gone, like the Nagji Trophy, the Stafford Cup, the Nizam Gold Cup, all these have ended. These were the nurseries where footballers used to come. Now they have all been taken over by cricket. And so that's one reason aspect I asked Mr. Kushal Das to look into it, to get more teams from the south. And Hyderabad winning this year, Hyderabad is a brick for footballing culture.
It's a great
should generate something for the Indian football.
I agree with your analysis that, the rise of Indian cricket post 1983, and that also changed the nature of fandom. The fan base, as kids, how passionately we followed football, children do not follow Indian football with that passion anymore, which is really, really tragic. Dhiman, you had a question. Jeet, you had a question.
Dhiman?
I'll go first.
Yes, please. Yeah, it's your show.
I just want to make, before my question, just a small comment on what you just said, fandom. See, there are many nations that may not be big footballing nations, but they have 1 or 2 footballers who go and play for big clubs. See, because it's a 360-degree cycle, unless youth need an idol. Japan today has just reached the World Cup in Qatar. They beat Australia, I think, day before yesterday. When Junichi Inamoto went and played for Arsenal, he may have come in the 85th minute when Arsenal was 2-0 up. He was known as the T-shirt. There were more T-shirts sold in Japan than what Arsenal paid for him. But he brought a culture where people started following football. More people came in. But that aside, my question to Mr. Roy is something else. You mentioned about corporatization of football clubs. Yes, Hyderabad has done well. The table toppers was Jamshedpur, Tatas. You mentioned about Mr. Malia 1998. See the problem, and I've interacted with both the clubs. The problem is, he gave the money, the officials ran the club. So it was the money came, they enjoyed the best of both. Money came from elsewhere, they had the power. Today, if you see the way Mohun Bagan is run, it is completely run professionally by RPSG Sports. And while Mohun Bagan office bearers may be there, they have no say in the running of the team. The problem with East Bengal in the last 2 sets of ownership is the officials still want to run the club. Whether it is Quest or whether it is Shree Cement, they were not running the club. Now both have had rocky relationships. I don't know the future of Shree Cement. But my question here is, why, if getting a corporate is so difficult and East Bengal traditionally had members funding it, so maybe approach some big Bengali houses. It's very sad that the Mohun Bagan East Bengal derby is basically Goenka versus Bangar. So maybe Punendu Chatterjee, probably one of the wealthiest Indians, this is just a thought. Or today, net worth-wise, Chandrasekhar Ghosh of Bandhan Bank. And then, either get these kind of people or have a model where it is the Barcelona model, which is what East Bengal had earlier. Do you think Bengali entrepreneurs can be sounded out to come forward?
Well, I will not say about Bengali, non-Bengali. All the three businessmen who has funded both East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, one was Vijay Mallya, the other one Mr. Goenka, Sanjeev Goenka, and the third one Mr. Bangur, all are residents of Calcutta. For years, they are more Bengalis than this thing. Mr. Bangur told me, in fact, this particular book was inspired by Mr. Hari Mohan Bangur. He told me to write this book. I was already writing. He wrote to compile it because he himself was a member of East Bengal Club and is involved in a lot of heritage work of Bengal itself. Well, Bengali, as we approached, Khadim was also one of our members, East Bengal earlier. But I think the Bengalis are not looking to these clubs anymore because these clubs, or the Indian football for that matter, they only depend on one particular match, that is East Bengal Mohun Bagan match, when there will be 100,000 people. Otherwise, there's no people on the ground. There's no people everything. When we taught for the AFC Cup, there was hardly anybody in the ground itself. So it is one generation, the generation of us who used to run bunk offices, run from colleges to go to watch East Bengal play or to go Mohun Bagan play. That generation is gone. Even this Bangal Ghoti fight, also with the partition, we now have the fourth generation. Earlier, they said, while wedding, আমরা বাঙাল বিয়েকে বিয়ে দেব না, বাড়ির বিয়ে করার সময়. Well, all those things have gone now. Now we have got eminent Ghoti supporters backing East Bengal. Photographer here is one, Mr. Gautam Mukherjee. Then we have Monomoy Bhattacharya. They are all East Bengal fans. In fact, I would also mention when we saw the last Nobel laureate, Abhijit Vinayak Banerjee, his entire family is Mohun Bagan. He himself is East Bengal. And
you'll be glad to know that in our family of very hardcore East Bengal, 72 cousins, 2 are hardcore Mohun Bagan supporters. I don't know how that happens, but it happens.
But then those things should go away. Now with the professionalization, and East Bengal and Mohun Bagan should be taken as other clubs like Hyderabad, Bangalore FC, as you mentioned, Jamshedpur and others, and to promote Indian football. If Indian football has to go places over 100, it has to come in the first, qualify for Olympics again. They have to go. They are not playing Asian Games 2 years now in that. 2 Asian Games running now. So something has to be done. The All India Football Federation, they are doing a lot of good job. One thing I would say, the recording, the website, which Mr. Kushal Das has done is excellent. Earlier, you would not get any records, any Indian playing Olympics or any Indian international matches results. Even earlier, Iraq, which won the Nehru Cup in 95 and 97, in 2004 or something, they approached Novi Kapadia that their office was bombed by that Kuwait war and something, and they had lost all their records. They had updated all their records on their web. They just wanted 2 places. 95 and 97, they won. They wanted the match results. They asked All India Football Federation, said, we don't have it. You ask some newspaper. You have everything. They eventually asked me, and that is how. One of the book, in this book also, I've given all matches of East Bengal played from 1920 to 2020, over 7,000 of them. This will be a documentation, start of documentation. We are doing one for All India Football Federation also. Mohun Bagan also I have when we do it.
It's really a phenomenal piece of work.
Yeah, this documentation is their main asset. Otherwise, the club went said, what is our asset? The ground, which is leased. Tent, which is also hypothecated.
So data is the asset.
This is the asset,
data
their
is the
performance.
asset. Yeah.
Their main performance.
Dhiman, your question.
Gautam, first of all, thank you so much for putting this book together, because as a country, possibly we do not chronicle history well, and we do not chronicle sports history well at all. So thank you so much for doing this. You know, you mentioned a little while ago a lot of things about one or two generations who do not come to the ground anymore. So my question as someone who's followed football in India for as long as you have is, why has that happened? I mean, there was this, so initially after the country was independent, you had this connect about the partition. People were uprooted. They saw East Bengal as the lodestar, as the North Star. It was the shining light for them. That, as you mentioned, for 4 generations has gone. So what has East Bengal done to keep itself relevant beyond the story of partition in these 100 years that it has been there? And had it done something like this, would it have not been more relevant now? And I'm not just talking of East Bengal. We are talking of East Bengal here because this is a book here. You could say the same for Mohun Bagan. You could say the same for Mohammedan Sporting. So for all this goodwill that they enjoy, for all the history that they have, why is the present so bleak? Why is it that people in Kolkata don't connect to East Bengal, Mohun Bagan, or Mohammedan Sporting for that matter, and connect to Chelsea, Manchester United, and whatever you have?
You see, first of all, the football at Maidan is no longer at the Maidan. It has shifted to Salt Lake. It has shifted to Salt Lake. One is that reason. It's a little far away. But still, East Bengal fans, when we had the Calcutta Football League at the Maidan, even now East Bengal owners have shifted football outside Calcutta. They have taken it to Kalyani, they have taken it to Noihati, and how should the sponsor, and everybody would go on a train, and all the fans to go and watch matches there. So the next generation, they are more interested in watching the English Premier League and others. And those who are East Bengal supporters, I think, still go to the ground. And I would say now for the clubs, very little thing is done. The membership cards are not renewed anymore, and very few are renewed. Very few are renewed. They are not interested. We only have programs like Poltu Das's birthday. For East Bengal or for Mohun Bagan, we will have their Mohun Bagan Day or East Bengal Centenary Day. This was not done before. We don't have a Jyotish Ghosh's birthday. DC Ghosh is the real man who did everything for the club. So I think gradually this is going down. Gradually football is going down, and people are now even more interested in even tennis, even badminton, other than going hockey. Why did they stop hockey? Every tournament in hockey, every league in hockey used to get a lot of crowd in the 80s and 90s, even 80s and 90s when Mohammad Shahid came and played for East Bengal. Mohun Bagan always used to win the trophy. This, I think the administrators, I'm not the real person to answer. Those who are owners of those who are now officials of East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, and how they will keep themselves relevant is their problem. How will they get, whether an investor, somebody wants an investor, but he wants to control all the team. But others have been a little more intelligent and allowed the investor to call the show. That is the time of the day.
Thank you so much. It's a very relevant question, Dhiman, and I think the fact that we have data to show that football fan base in India has burgeoned enormously from the 70s and the 80s, since I've been following football certainly, and yet there's been such a sharp decline in the fan base of the Calcutta Giants. If there are no more sort of pressing questions, we will call this session, we'll conclude this session, and thank you so much, Gautam Da, once again for gifting football fans of India and this city this wonderful book, East Bengal at 100.
Yeah, this is I would also mention.
Let's hold this up.
Thank you very much. This is the first jersey. This is the first jersey of the club, and this is the last jersey. The last one in 2020 jersey.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice touch. The first jersey and the last jersey. Yeah, the current jersey. And I think red and gold sun is setting, which is a appropriate way to call curtains on this. It is not an appropriate, I agree. Not in the metaphoric sense, certainly.
No, the book is here. It will be for the next one. Book will be there even if the sun sets. Club, she is right. I think some sensible people should come to the club and realize what is the real thing right now. Take it too.
Puna, you and I should run the club.
Thank you so much for a lovely session on a topic which is very close to Calcutta's heart. Thank you so much. We have a short break of 30 minutes before our next session. So thank you.